It's interesting that you mentioned geriatric pregnancy and advanced maternal age, because what these phrases are showing us is that there actually is room for change.
And there has been some.
And there has been some. And that's part of the reason we're recording this episode and all of the episodes where we're going to talk about these words, right? Because we want to contribute to making that change and to making care better for women. So there are kind of two places where we really care. I mean, there are a lot more than two places where we care about change and this lexicon. But the two main places that sort of matter in terms of especially new doctors who are learning the ropes and the words that they're using are from ACOG. That's an acronym we're going to be using a lot. It's the American Academy. No, sorry. It's the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And they have a dictionary of terms that they use that makes it easy for communicating with other providers and charting and making sure that, everyone is on the same page. And then there's another called the ICD-11, and that's actually what's used for insurance coding. ACOG has said we no longer prefer geriatric pregnancy or advanced maternal age. We prefer pregnancy after 35. And that came directly from a change maker that was when the Peanut app put out their renaming revolution in 2021.
Right. It went viral.
Yeah. And it went through all of these words, some of which we're going to talk about today. But so far, that's the only one that's changed. And it has changed according to ACOG, but it has not changed in the ICD-11. So you might have doctors who are trying to adopt these recommendations because many doctors are trying to be more patient-centered.
But they can't chart them because then your insurance wouldn't understand what you're talking about.
Exactly. And so for you, for example, as a first, hopefully full-term pregnancy, your insurance coding would say, and I'm going to use notes. We're actually going to use notes this whole episode because this is really important and we want to just make sure we get all the details right for you, would be called early primigravida.
First time 35 plus pregnancy.
Yep. And then I think it would change to multigravida if you have had multiple pregnancies. All that to say, there is change that can be made. That's part of why we're having this conversation. But ultimately, we want to look at, how this lexicon is blaming women for things that are out of their control. It's making them feel like failures if they don't live up to some arbitrary standard set by some medical doctor 200-300 years ago who was male by default.
Of course.
Because women couldn't be doctors. And it's just language that's at odds with our lived experience. And that was really my experience and something that we're going to talk a lot about next week. And we've even seen there's recent research that says this does contribute to poorer patient outcomes. It does contribute to poorer medical care and patient-centered care. This episode is sponsored exclusively by Genate by SNP Therapeutics, providing genetics-powered nutrition tailored for every stage of the fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum journeys. With Genate, it's not just about a single product or service. It's about a journey toward optimal maternal and fetal health. From their insightful Genate test to their meticulously formulated prenatal vitamin, every step is a leap forward in maternal care. My own journey with Genate has been transformative, bringing a sense of control and peace in an often unpredictable time. They are changing the game in prenatal nutrition, and I'm proud to be part of the movement to provide personalized healthcare for every mother out there. Learn more at undefiningmotherhood.com/Genate and use code undefining10 for 10% off. So this is really important. So let's talk about some of these terms, right? Okay. Because people are like, okay, well, you keep saying this, but what words are you talking about? For me, one of the worst, incompetent cervix.
Yep. So you just woke up one day and decided to be incompetent.
Incompetent. We're going to talk more about that specific one later in this episode. All right. What's one for you?
Lazy ovary.
Ooh.
She's so lazy.
She's so lazy when one of the ovaries produces fewer follicles and eggs than other ovaries. She's so lazy. Hostile uterus.
Hostile. Love it.
I was never given that diagnosis, but I could have been. I could have been. My doctors were just kinder to me than that, but not all doctors are.
Got a hard one for you.
Oh.
Fetal demise means stillbirth.
Fetal demise for stillbirth. And, the thing to know about stillbirth is that when someone has a stillborn baby, they still give birth. They have to give birth to that baby. And yet the language is not even talking about it as if it's a baby, but the mom has to go through labor, and she is usually induced. And I mean, now we have a practice where a lot of parents will do photography sessions with their babies, which I highly recommend to people we work with because it can be so supportive later. And I mean, they've been carrying these babies for anywhere from 20 to 40 weeks to get that particular diagnosis. And yet the language doesn't even acknowledge the baby as a person.
It's so clinical.
It's so clinical and cold. Oh my gosh. The one we've already hit on, geriatric pregnancy, of course. And then one that is one of my personal least favorites because of my personal experience, products of conception. So when I had multiple miscarriages, I had to have surgery for one, but even after the other ones, we had to do ultrasounds. And they're like, we need to make sure that we have retrieved all of the products of conception. And they were talking about my baby. And right. Tissue.
Right.
But mostly they're talking about the baby.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Any other ones?
I noticed a lot of adjectives like poor.
Mm-hmm.
So putting the word poor before something is very common. Also failed or failure.
Yes.
Is really common.
Failure is a really common, and that gets into things like the medical term for miscarriage is abortion, and there can be things about like a failed abortion, if perhaps a missed miscarriage, where you have a woman's body has not completely expelled that pregnancy. There are a lot of words around failure, and I think that really is what gets to the problem with this, right? That we really want to focus on today. We could write a whole book about this, like easily. But the main things that really stand out to me are that one, these words are blaming women for things that are out of their control. They're calling them incompetent, lazy, failures, but they couldn't control them. Number two, it suggests a failure of the woman's body for not carrying a pregnancy absolutely perfectly, which goes back to that same idea we've been talking about, right? Womanhood equals motherhood. And so you are failing
at your job.
way that makes you feel shameful. If anything goes wrong, not even if you don't conceive or carry, but if anything goes wrong, we can do a cerclage. And in most cases, that is going to resolve the problems for people with incompetent cervix, as long as they have the diagnosis early enough. But we're still calling their cervix incompetent.
Right.
And it really just reduces the struggle that women face. It's just so clinical. We're at real odds with the emotions of what women are experiencing and the clinical language. And ultimately, it's just so horrifically dismissive. As researchers of words and women,
this is our jam.
This is our stuff. I dress comfortably today. I just need to feel cozy to be able to have this conversation. So
I'm professional.
You are a professional. It's an interesting choice. We're gonna get comfy here, and this one's gonna be fun. So get comfy with us, friend. Grab your coffee. You're gonna need it.